Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello, I am Bhante Pamutto, and I'm here with the Indonesian Buddhist family in Queens, New York. And today I would like to give a reflection about the monastic order, Bhikkhus and Bhikunis, and the Vinaya, the code of conduct by which they lead their lives. And I'd like to start with a short verse in Pali, which is something that I recited when I became a novice, so the first step to becoming a monk. And it goes, Sabba dukkha nissarana, nibbana sachi karanataya, imang kasawang gahetwa, pabajang detame bante anukampang upadaya. And this is what I said to my preceptor. And what it means is, for the crossing over of all suffering, for the realization of nibbana, I put on the yellow robe. Out of compassion, please give me the going forth. And in these words, which were originally spoken by the Buddha, we have the whole meaning of why somebody becomes a monk. And that is for overcoming suffering, for overcoming the suffering in our lives, and for realizing the ultimate peace, and that is nibbana, the cooling of the heart. And so this is why sometimes when people have come to know the Buddha's teachings, they really find in their heart a deep desire to practice them fully. And they look at their lives and they see that there are many things which are interrupting their practice or taking up a lot of their energy. Things like raising a family or being in a relationship or having a job. Many people work jobs that they have to spend 40 or 50 hours a week on. And when you take up all of that time, what is left for visiting the temple and for practicing sila, for practicing meditation? There's much less. And so sometimes a man or a woman might decide, I think I'm willing to give up all of the comforts of being a layperson so that I can gain something which is very precious, and that is time. And while monks don't have much in terms of physical possessions, they do have a lot more time to practice the Buddha's teachings. And time is in short supply. We don't know how long we have in this life, but we are guaranteed to die someday. And so some people feel very strongly they shouldn't waste any time at all. And so to become a monk is a very important decision for them. The first thing that one can know is that it is a temporary decision. The Buddha did not establish an ordination that is lifelong. So you'll always take it day by day, and actually minute by minute. After you ordain, you can decide at any point that you would like to go back to being a layperson. And you just have to say a simple formula, and as long as somebody is there and somebody hears you and somebody understands you, then you are no longer a monk, and you take off the robe and you go back to lay life. So this is why the Buddha established a monastic order, so that you can step up to a higher level of practice for as long as you're able, And even until the end of your life. But at any time, if you do not wish to keep practicing at that high level, you can come back down to lay life. So this is the monastic order that the Buddha set up. And in many ways, it's mirroring the way that he led his life. And the Vinaya that monks and nuns practice has many different rules. And many people are confused about all of these rules. And they're very concerned. It sounds very scary to live with so many rules governing everything that you do. But I think when one understands the core of these rules and what they are for, then they actually seem very natural. One famous monk, Ajahn Dun in Thailand, he once said that the Patimokkha rules, the rules that the monks live by, are like the aquarium that a fish is in. So imagine a fish in a fish tank swimming around in the water, and he knows the edges of his tank. And he might have the thought, oh, this tank is confining me. I wish I could travel freely. I wish I wasn't stuck in this tank. But the reality is, if you broke the wall of the tank and all the water came out, the fish would not be very happy. He's not able to breathe air like we can. The water would run out and he would suffocate. And so the Patimokkha rules are very similar for monks and nuns in that they are the container which keeps in all of the goodness and the nutriment, the things that nourish us in the holy life. So if we really want to practice the Buddha's teachings, if we really want to realize what he realized, then we need the safe container of the monastic rules to keep us moving in the right direction. And these monastic rules are really built around 8 things, which are taught to every monk and nun right after they ordain. It's one of the rules that they have to be told about these 8 things right after they ordain, because these, if you know nothing else, these explain what it's like to be a monk in the Bhikkhu or Bhikkhuni Sangha. And the first 4 of these deal with the things that are not to be done. And most of the Patimokkha rules, 227 for men and 311 for women, most of these rules will derive from these and just set up a nice series of checks and balances so that monks don't fall into these 4 very dangerous activities. The first one is to have intimate relations. So if a bhikkhu has relations with a woman, or a bhikkhuni has relations with a man, this is something that is not done by renunciants. This is done by regular people. Regular people get in these kind of relationships. But when one has ordained, they have decided to let go of having a relationship, let go of having a family in this way, because that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of commitment. And when they put on the yellow robe, they are trying to commit to realizing Nibbana in this very life. And so there are many rules for the monks which deal how they relate to women, so that they don't fall into this category of offenses. And if you see monks and nuns who are getting in these sorts of relationships, then you should know that they're doing something that the Buddha said should not be done. And this is how you can know people who are practicing right from people who are deviating or who have different rule sets than the Buddha put down. And there are different forms of Buddhism that have actually become very watered down because they've decided to leave some of these rules. The second one is that monks cannot steal. So this is very important to understand. Is one of the reasons monks have so few possessions is we are taught to be content with what we have. And the more things we own, the more burdens we have. We're not used to thinking in this way. If we have a car, we think, yay, I have a car, I can go wherever I want. But a monk will actually think, oh no, I have a car. That means I've got to put gas in it, and I've got to put oil in it, and I've got to take care of it, and I've got to keep the battery charged, and I've got to keep it safe from thieves who want to take it. And there's so many burdens with owning things. And so monks and nuns are trained to actually be happy with as little possessions as possible. But there are times when people might be tempted to take something that is not theirs. And in terms of little things, this is a minor offense. But it matches the same as the law of this country. When something gets to be of a certain value, such that one would be punished severely by the law for taking it, like a laptop computer, or a car, or a golden Buddha statue, something that has, $75 or $100 worth of value, then that monk is already, the moment they steal that thing, they are no longer a monk. And this is one of the things that we do not do. So monks, you will see, are very careful that when they use something, they use it with an understanding. If it's not given to them, then they only borrow it. They don't take it for themselves, because they're very careful around this rule. And the third rule is that monks and nuns cannot kill a human being. And so monks and nuns lead a life of nonviolence. We try to lead a life of peace. And this peace extends to all living beings. We don't want to harm even a fly. So from this major rule of not killing human beings, there are smaller rules which deal with not taking the life of animals, or not polluting water, which will kill animals we might not even be able to see in the water. And not digging earth, because we might hurt the creatures underneath. Not chopping down trees, because all sorts of animals live in the trees. And even creatures that we cannot see, like devas, might be living in the tree and might get very upset. But the major rule deals with killing human beings. So this is something that monks never do. And if one sees like a Shaolin monk or a Kung Fu monk, and it seems like, oh, they must be Buddhist, then actually this is different than the Buddhist teachings. The Buddha never encouraged the monks to be violent. He never allowed for them to take the life of someone else. And monks also can't speak in praise of taking the life. So if they even encouraged somebody to go out and to kill, this would be against the Vinaya. This would be a major offense. The final one is that monks and nuns lead a life of truth. So they cannot lie about the things they have attained. They cannot lie about what they have accomplished on their spiritual journey. And in the Buddha's time, sometimes monks would do this to try to get extra support. And the Buddha said this is like stealing from the faith of the lay people. So often you'll find that monks are very hesitant to talk about what they have achieved in meditation or how enlightened they are. Sometimes because it's hard to know, but other times because they're trying to be careful. They only want to speak what they know for sure, and they only want to speak what is beneficial. So many of the Patimokkha rules deal with how we use our speech effectively and truthfully. We don't harm others with it. We don't say things that are criticizing or insulting. And we don't break our promises. So monks try very hard when we say we're going to do something specific to do that, or to let somebody know if for some reason we can't, if something comes up and we can't make it. Because we actually have rules about keeping our agreements and doing what we say we'll do to help us lead a life of truth and having words that are worth listening to, that are worth taking seriously, because this helps us as Dhamma teachers. So these are the four, what we call parajika, or things not to be done. And from these four things, you can actually find many of the rules, many of the smaller rules come from these. And now there are four things which the holy life is based on. These are called the four supports, or the four requisites. And when one knows about the four requisites, one sees that the Buddha was very wise. He looked out and he tried to figure out what the monks and nuns would need in order to practice for Nibbana. So there are many things that people think they need. When the Buddha talked about needs, he talked about things that you cannot survive unless you have these things. And so in terms of all the things we think we need, like money and fame and success and electricity, actually the Buddha said this is not, you can go more basic than this. And so the four requisites are what the Buddha said are the absolute minimum things we need. If we don't get these things, we won't be able to practice. Our life will be too difficult. And these things are food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. So the first, food, actually many lay people in Buddhist countries and in Buddhist temples, a lot of what they do is related to food and to feeding the monks. So in the Buddha's time, when the Buddha first attained enlightenment and first ordained the first monks, they were already alms mendicants, which means they would go out with a begging bowl, and whatever food was put in that bowl became their meal for the day. So they were already, at the beginning of the Sangha, leading very austere, very simple lives, where they didn't store anything, and they were happy even with scraps, even with leftovers. But after many years, it came to be that there were so many people who had faith in the Buddha's teachings who were not part of the monastic Sangha. They didn't become monks. They wanted to stay lay people, but they also wanted to practice well and to support those who were practicing well, because it brought them great joy whenever somebody attained another stage of enlightenment. That there was so much support. The Buddha actually had to encourage the monks by putting different rules around eating, so that they would only look for enough food to keep them healthy. If monks could eat all day long and they could eat whatever they wanted, then they would probably get very fat, and they would spend most of their time like cooking and eating and cleaning and storing food. They would not have much time for practice. So at one point the Buddha set a rule so that monks and nuns can only eat from the time between when the sun comes up until the sun is directly overhead. This is about 6 hours, so it's about 1/4 of the day. And it's within this window, monks and nuns can eat anything that they've been offered that day. So the Buddha also made a rule that monks and nuns can't store food. We can't hold on to things from yesterday to eat today. So in this way, with these two rules, the Buddha made it so that monks will continue to be just like the original monks, alms mendicants, those who have to receive food every day to keep alive. And in doing this, actually, it leads to a lot of contentment, because once we've eaten, we can just let go. We can say, oh, okay, I'm going to be okay today. I got something to eat. And tomorrow we'll see. And this is very freeing, very cooling, very liberating for the heart, to not have to worry about food all day long, but just during these 6 hours. The Buddha said, monks, I eat once a day, and I am healthy, and am able to practice well. You too could be healthy and be able to practice well if you were to eat 1 meal a day. And so this is what the Buddha allowed as the minimum. He said, at a minimum, when you become a monk, you should be able to expect that you could go out with a bowl and have food put in it and be able to eat 1 meal a day. This is the minimum. But he also allowed many other forms of getting food. So, like here at the Vihara, there's a breakfast and a lunch provided by the lay community, and monks are allowed to do this. And we don't have to eat from our begging bowl, but it can be set out on trays for us. This is all allowed by the Buddha. Likewise, there are certain rules around what we can receive, but most of what people think are rules around what we can eat are not actually universal rules. They're not part of the Patimokkha. The first thing to know is that there's more than one class of food. So to start from the back, there are foods that are considered medicines. And this is like coffee and tea, or spices like ginger and cinnamon, things like vinegar or chili paste. These things, people don't consider these to be food. They consider these to be medicines to just give some energy to the body or to deal with different diseases. There are many diseases in the belly that you would eat ginger for, or turmeric, or fennel seed. So these things, once they are offered to a monk, they can be kept for their entire life. So the Buddha allowed meat can be eaten if it is pure in 3 ways. This is that, number 1, it cannot be eaten if it's raw. So it has to be cooked in some way. And there's different ways to cook food. So you can smoke it, or you can soak it in an acid, like vinegar, to preserve it. But you cannot just eat raw meat. And this is to protect the monks and nuns, I think, from diseases that can be carried in meat. So we're not allowed to just eat anything raw that's given to us. Second, we can't eat the meat of certain animals. So this is animals like humans. We can't eat human meat. And we can't eat the meat of special animals like elephants or horses that are very close in human society and revered by different cultures. And we can't eat the meat of certain animals that are predators. So things like lions or snakes or sharks or alligators. In the stories, this was because when monks ate lion meat, for instance, the lions would smell that on them and attack them. But I think also in many cultures, this is looked down upon. Like in our culture, there are people who eat alligators. But many people are like, that doesn't seem normal. So it is a little strange to eat the meat of certain predators. And so the Buddha just said it's just simpler not to just leave those aside. And finally, monks and nuns are not allowed to eat meat when they see, hear, or suspect that that animal was killed for them. So this is the difference between eating meat that was purchased at the supermarket and eating meat that was gotten from the farm in order to feed to monks and nuns. So this means that once the animal has already been killed, then the meat is just meat, and the farmer or the person the butcher, the person who takes that meat and turns it into food, will still need to be able to get merit, will still need to be able to do something good with that, because this is their livelihood. And if monks and nuns were to just shun them and say, I won't accept this, we don't eat that, then how would this person develop in the Dhamma if they couldn't make offerings, if they couldn't develop faith in the Sangha? This is the difference. So if a monk or a nun knows that the person had the animal killed, like if they went to a lobster tank and they said, give me 3 lobsters so that I can feed the monks. If the monks heard that, then they would say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't accept this. Or if somebody went to the farm and they said, oh, that cow out there, I want the whole cow cut up because I want to feed the whole big Sangha of monks. If the monks suspect that this really fresh meat came straight for the farm for their purposes, they would have to say, I'm sorry, we can't accept that. But if it seems that the person went to the grocery store and got some chicken and cooked it up, then this would be okay. Though some monks and nuns still decide, especially in certain countries like China, they'll decide just no meat at all. And that is the decision of certain communities, but it is not universal to all monks and nuns. And so this is the section on the requisite of food. And then there's the requisite of clothing. So you will notice that monks and nuns have a robe. And actually, we have 3 robes for monks and 5 robes for bhikkhunis. And these are our basic requisites, our basic clothing. If we had nothing else, we could survive with these. So we have a lower robe, an upper robe, and an outer robe, which I'm not wearing right now, but you'll see many times sits on the monk's left shoulder. And that one is double layers, so sometimes it serves as a blanket. And when you fold it out, it's quite warm and thick. But we are also allowed, just like with food, to accept more. So we can have hats and scarves and rain jackets and boots and sandals and all of these things if we need them. So a monk is encouraged to be happy with little and to be happy with whatever they have. So you see, my robe is not in fantastic good shape. It was a hand-me-down when I got it, and I've tried to get different colors of dye to take, and it hasn't always worked. And it's gotten some bleach on it at different times, but I'm still quite happy with it. It still serves its purpose. And this is the difference between a monk and a layperson. Lay people usually have a lot of clothing, and for all different uses and times, and they add layers and they take layers off. But a monk is really trying to let that go, to let go of fashion, to let go of having preferences. Again, to gain time and to gain energy that they would have spent on that, and to be able to put it towards their practice. The third is senasana, or sitting and lying down places. And this deals with the buildings. So a monk is not allowed to own a building, but the Sangha is allowed to own buildings. And so a monk can't own the property, but they can be allowed to use it. They can be offered it. And the Sangha can be offered this building, this Vihara, and allowed to use it by the lay community. But when the monks grow old and die, or they move on, or they disrobe, then the building stays. You know, it's been offered to the Sangha, and maybe other monks and nuns will move in at some point, or maybe it will just be used for some other purpose. And so rather than owning property and owning homes, which takes a whole lot of money and energy and effort, monks are happy to live wherever is offered for them. And the Buddha said this is the most meritorious of all offerings that lay people can make, is to offer the place where people do practice, where people practice the Buddhist teachings. To offer a hut in the woods, or to offer a temple, or to offer an eating place, or to offer even a room for a single night for a monk that is traveling through is a very meritorious offering because it gives shelter to that monastic and lets them practice for another day. And it protects them from the elements and it protects them from the bugs. And so this is one of the things monks are trained to be happy wherever they end up for the day, because it's not about where you live or having something that's all yours. Monks are taught that even this body is sort of like a room that we're staying in for a little bit of time. And at the end of our lives, we're going to pack up and move. We're going to leave behind this body, just like we pack up and move from temple to temple. Finally, there's the fourth requisite, which is medicines. And so monks and nuns are trained to be content with the most basic medicines. And you see that people in the world are trying very hard to be healthy, to be fit, to be thin and pretty. And monks and nuns are actually meant to let go of these fascinations. We're told to reflect every day, I will get old, I will get sick, and I will die. We're told to think about this every day because that helps us let go of our attachment to being really good and healthy and fit and pretty right now. Because we know we won't be able to hold on to it forever. And if we can understand that when we're still young, when we're still healthy, then we'll be able to save all that energy and put it towards our practice, so that when we do get old, we'll have understood the Buddha's teachings better, and we won't be so disturbed by that experience. And the medicines that we're allowed to use are the same medicines that everybody's allowed to use. But monks and nuns are only supposed to use them when we are actually sick. And so you will often see that we wait until we have something wrong with us before we ask for medicines. And if you go and look in a medicine cabinet in many temples, you'll only find things that were given because somebody was sick. And maybe the monks and nuns didn't even use them all. Maybe they got better before they finished the bottle. But otherwise, you might not be able to find many medicines. Monks and nuns aren't stockpiling these things. But once they're healthy, then they just move on. There's no reason to hold on to the things that help us get better when we're better. So when we're healthy enough to be able to practice the Buddha's teachings, then medicines are no longer needed. And these are the four requisites, and these are the four major rules. And when one knows these 8 things, one knows most of the patimokkha. One knows most of why monks and nuns do what they do. It's to facilitate a life that is pure and leading towards nibbana. And with an understanding of these things, you can, if there's anything that seems strange to you, you can stop and consider, could this be related to one of the 4 defeats, one of the 4 major rules? Or could this be something about one of the 4 requisites? And if so, you'd be like, oh, that's why, I see. And you can look at this, and maybe there's a principle there of how this helps one lead the holy life and to practice sila, samadhi, and panya, virtue and meditation and wisdom. So I hope this answers some of your questions you might have about the monastic order, or helps you think about what it is that you actually find curious and what you're seeing when you look at different groups of monks and nuns. As always, if you have any more questions, I invite you to go to your local monk and just ask them. We're very happy to explain why we do what we do. And many monks train for many years to understand these rules better and better, so that they can better and better practice in the same way that the Buddha did. So may you be well, and may you be happy.